Hi, good afternoon, and welcome to everyone in today's edition of Business and Banking Dialogue. I'm KK, your host and moderator for this show. Welcome everyone in the EPS channel, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. We are live in all these channels, and thank you for participating again in today's edition. So, ladies and gentlemen, identity is the heart of everyday life. So is commerce, and therefore payments. Identity, one of our most valuable assets, is only becoming more important as a central part of how our economy functions. In today's digital age, identity is more complex than what we understand. Any financial transaction requires your identity. Correct? We all know that. Identity has become the compounding of everything that we own, do, and share. Without verified attributes such as your name, Aadhaar, and PAN, you may not be able to do many things. Bank accounts, housing, and healthcare become inaccessible to someone without an established identity. And that's something we all know very well. Our digital identity is how we present ourselves to the world and how we interact with it. So it's important that each one of us has control and understand what is our identity from a digital point of view, how it is stored, how it is it possible that we can misuse it. So to discuss all these and about the trends in digital identity, we have with us Mr. Ganesh Kumar. He is the former chairman of Indian Financial Technology and Services, more popularly called as IFTAS, which is, I think, very popular. Everybody knows about it. Ganesh sir was instrumental in introducing MICR-based check processing, RTGS, check truncation, and other electronic data interchange initiatives when he was with RBI. Incidentally, he was also the ED for RBI. These payment systems have made our lives much more easier and comfortable. We use these payment systems regularly and identifies the most important aspect of these transactions that we do. Good afternoon, sir. Welcome to the show, Mr. Ganesh Kumar.
Good afternoon, KK. Nice to be back with the group of enlightened audience. So looking forward.
Thank you, sir. Sir, we are approaching a milestone, and so we want you've been hearing and you've been participating in this dialogue. Sir, for briefly, what are your thoughts about the program and how is it going?
This is a good initiative by EPS. The based, thought-provoking, and stimulating deliveries by a lot of people, men who are known in their respective areas, is actually providing a lot of inputs. In fact, when I was asked to join initially, I thought, why me? But then I thought maybe I can share a little bit of concerns that I have, a little bit of confusion that I have, a little bit of lack of clarity that I have, so that the collective wisdom of a lot of people will result in better services and products for the country, for the citizen at large. So good initiative. I think you're crossing the half-a-century mark. So good initiative. Go ahead. I thought it's perhaps also good time that we, having focused more on how to do business resumption on a post-COVID scenario, we can possibly go to nuts and bolts of some of those things. And I thought maybe it'll be a good opportunity to talk about one of the most challenging, important, and yet easy aspects to be covered, which is what is, as KK said, digital identity. So good journey, and I hope things will unfold better in the days to come.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your kind words, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, each one of us have all sorts of identities. We have voter cards, PAN, Aadhaar. We have our own corporate ID, corporate cards, mobile phones, and many more. So, sir, why not have a single identity like what is there in the USA, which is called the Social Security number?
Okay. Good starting point, KK. One of the challenges that actually everybody faces in identity is actually to know whether this person is indeed the person whom he professes to be. So if I am talking to you today and I'm known as Ganesh Kumar, possibly all of you get that confidence, those of you who have not perhaps seen me or heard me earlier, only because KK in his introduction did tell something about me. So more than the name given to me, more than who I am, it is possibly the perception of whom I am, the way I am perceived to be Ganesh Kumar is what is more important. Anyway, that is the lighter side of it. But before I go on to it, one or two small statutory, I wouldn't call them warnings like in a cigarette pack, but statutory aspects is whatever I'm going to tell in the next 1 hour or so, 45 minutes or so, I don't profess to say that there is anything new in this. Most of what I say will be known by most of you in some form or the other. The second is some of the thoughts that I will actually say now might have occurred to many of you earlier. So there is no claim for originality or intellectual property or anything like that. And the third and the most important thing is that it will be provocative in some areas. The reason why I wanted to be provocative is that at the end of it, if we get some clarity on what is the way forward and if people can work on that, that will be good human service that we are doing for the country at large and later on for the world as well. Because one of the comforts that I have, which I said in an earlier presentation, was the satisfaction that India is possibly leading in the area of payment and settlement systems. So why not we take a lead here, given the advantage that we have in the technology area, the huge skill sets that we have, the intelligence, and that is what I thought I will say. Coming back to identity, I recall that when I was a little more younger, I still feel I'm young anyway, but when I was a little more young, the common identification that a person used to be associated with was his entry or his name, his or her name in the ration card. You go to any government facility, you go to any place, if a ration card is flashed, people think, or people always took it for granted that you profess to be. From that period, like KK said, we have migrated quite a lot. But when we migrated, one of the things that also happened willy-nilly, maybe not well under design, but as a consequence is that we have too many identifiers. While the identity is still the same, I'm still Ganesh Kumar. Like KK said, my voter ID is something. My driving license is something else. My permanent account number is something else. My Aadhaar number is something else. The identity which the Reserve Bank gave me and identified me as an ID is something else. When I go to my email, I have a different ID. Most often than not, I keep wondering, why should so many identifiers identify a human being? Some of those of you who have actually heard me earlier, I used to even toy around with the idea of saying, can we not have a small chip impregnated under the skin of a child when the child is born? And that actually identifies the child for the rest of its life. But then that looked more like a science fiction thing. But today, with the development in science, and more important than development in science is development of interrelationships of data, I'm convinced that we don't need these many identifiers. It is always better to work with one. So KK's point about why not we have one unique identifier like the Social Security identifier in the United States, great idea. But I'm not too sure whether the idea of a Social Security number will go well with the masses in India, given the type of political, economic, and other strategical challenges that we have in this country. I thought I will reserve something to the end, but I thought I will do it. Thankfully for us, our parents have given a very good identity, which is our name. There are different forms in which the name is given. We'll talk about that a little later. But can we not just go ahead and have the name as an identifier? Everybody takes pride in the name that is assigned by the parent or by whoever has given the name. Can we just do with that? I'm sure a lot of people, especially my banker friends, will say, what if there are duplicate names? What if there are duplicate initials? What if the same name with the initial is there, even if the date of the birth is same? There are multiple possibilities or probabilities which can come. We can identify all of them. But the point is, today with the technological advances and we have a lot of data-based interrelationships, can we not have one identifier to identify a person? And at the back end, respective systems can have whatever they want. This is what will be the focus of my discussion. So certainly, as KK said, we can have a unique one identifier. Uh, and there is a pointer which he has already said, why not the social security number which is given in the US? So maybe there is also a general feeling or tendency to look up to the government to say, why not something which is given by the government be the one which is there? Because it gives a sense of quasi-legal sanctity as well. The Aadhaar did pose itself as one of the potential large-scale users for identity management. But then after the Supreme Court judgments and some of the other things which have happened, maybe its potential got a little less. So yes, certainly it can work. We'll talk a little more in detail as we go on today.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for that great introduction. So what is digital identity, and what are the trends that you see driving the need for digital identity systems?
Okay. What is digital identity? I think everybody knows, so I don't need to give any definition here. Rather than I will go on the aspects surrounding what a digital identity is. But before I go to that, let me go back to my favorite comparative feature here. A few years ago, and I'm talking with reference to the banking sector, if somebody had to do a transaction with a bank, and if he were a customer of a bank, he or she needed to necessarily quote the bank account number.
Yes.
In the good old days, the account number used to be a maximum of 6 digits. So it was easy for people to remember. And if you ask anybody what your account number is, people used to say what the account number is. They knew the bank where they were banking in. And in 99.9% of the cases, they also knew the branch. Those were the days when we had branch banking, and bank-based banking was not there. So if I had an account with Canara Bank in Jayanagar branch in Bangalore, I had a number, let's say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and I used to remember, and the bank used to identify Ganesh Kumar as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Ganesh used to identify the bank relationship as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But with the proliferation of bank branches, large number of customers dealing with bank branches, 6 digits was not possible. So the number grew. The number grew because typically, like most of the cases of scaling up which happened, we just went on adding digits. And today, I think if I'm right, the longest account number is 13 digits, or some banks even have 15 digits. And everybody understands that it's a big challenge to remember a 13 or a 15 digit number. And more so, a number which is assigned by a bank, not by the person who owns it, and used sparingly but not regularly. So that is how identity was established. Today, I'll give one more example and then I will say what we want. In the good old days, I don't know whether it's good or not, but in the olden days when we had DOS-based PCs and we had floppy drives and this drive of that kind, I still remember that a file name in an IT system, in a computer system, couldn't be more than 8 characters long because it was related to the bit, the byte had 8 characters. And it could not have anything more than 8, less than 8, and it cannot have special characters like dots, ampersand, at the rate of, etc. You could not also have the same file names in a particular floppy disk or a file or a hard disk, etc. And everybody used to accept that as a given, and we used to get identifiers made on the IT system. Let's fast forward today. Now, today, most of us use social media. So if I have either a WhatsApp or a Twitter, I can have a name which can be my own. I can have the WhatsApp group which is my own. And the same WhatsApp group can be given to another group having another group of people also. So there, from an identifier, which is the name of the group, the identifier became the members of the group who had their telephone numbers, and people thought that telephone numbers matching them typically would not lead to duplication. So the point what I wanted to say is innovation has brought in better methods. We have moved away from the 8-digit file name to like most of us must have seen in social media messages, what Santa Banta gives in terms of file names and passwords. It can go on for any number with all types of characters. In fact, as a security measures, we encourage special characters in the password at least. So things have changed. Can we not look at this also to identify people? Why should we stay? Now I'll go back to my example. If Ganesh Kumar is banking with Canara Bank in Jayanagar branch in Bangalore, using the statistical theories of probability, there could be another Ganesh Kumar with the same initial banking with the same bank branch in the same city. But as long as the bank is able to identify that this is Ganesh Kumar number 1 and that is Ganesh Kumar number 2, I don't think that Ganesh Kumar need to be burdened with having another number which will identify him as Ganesh Kumar. So that is one seed that I am sowing now, saying that identifying a unique person is something which the end use system should do and not the enter person or the entry point to a system. This is a change in the way we are doing. All of us are used to ensuring that the entry point will be ensuring uniqueness. I'm changing that paradigm and saying that let the system take care of the uniqueness and not the entry point. I know a lot of people will say there are challenges. Yes, there will be challenges, but this is possibly an opportunity where we may have to change it. So if there are two Ganesh Kumars, when the system knows that there is two Ganesh Kumars, and today a lot of data analytics is available, big data and data analytics, artificial intelligence, etc., the system can easily find out that this is Ganesh Kumar. He has accessed this system through this IP. These are the IPs that he has been accessing in the past, and I'm sure the system to at least 99% or 95 or 80% will be able to say this is Ganesh Kumar number 1. If it is not there, the system can prompt and say which Ganesh Kumar are you, and ask for maybe my initial expansion of my initial, maybe my date of birth, something which I know, not something which is assigned to me, because anything that is assigned to me is forgettable, whereas anything that I have which is my own, chances of me forgetting that are actually lesser. But more important than what I am or I have, if I have something which is ingrained in me, which could be biometrics, it could be a ray of light which flashes on my gets back information saying this is indeed Ganesh Kumar number 1. Or maybe the voice recognition. Today, there are a lot of voice recognition tools which are able to do it, but that can be faked as well. There can be multiple technologies through which I can be identified. And if I can be identified that way in a digital world, now this is where I wanted to come to the conclusion about what is there in a digital world. The identification of the person is more from the system which is actually getting the inputs rather than from the person who is saying that he is there. And I will again go back to my science fiction style, that if I were to physically make an entry into a bank branch, there will be possibly a camera, maybe a speaker, maybe a mic, maybe a set of IT devices. And the moment I enter inside the branch of the bank, it will be able to capture some unique characteristics of mine and then send across to, let's say, the teller counter or the facilitating counter, where the counter man, the moment I stand near him, says, yes, Mr. Ganesh Kumar, what do you want me to help you on? And the same thing can be replicated into an IT system. It could be a mobile phone, an internet-based access from my laptop or iPad, or in the Internet of Things, any other device. So the digital identity is going to be something, the system is going to identify me, and I don't say that I am so unless it is for authentication at the second level.
Yeah, but I just would like to interject there. We are talking of a universal digital identity. It's not only confined to banks. Yes. We need to look at so many other aspects of life. So it can't be limited to the banks only. So it should be such that it is usual in nature. I think that's the point I thought I should get it across to you.
Absolutely. Yes, KK, you're right. Maybe that point I missed out. I'll just take half a minute on that and then I'll come back. So the point is, yes.
Sure.
So once this is known as Ganesh Kumar, there will be identifications or identifiers which will say that this is the voter ID recognition factor for Ganesh Kumar, which may be a voter ID number or an Aadhaar number or a driving license. So if you were to enter, let's say that I have jumped a signal, the policeman standing there or the camera which is there will identify me by the driving license number or possibly the registration number which I have linked it to my card. Maybe if I go to a voting booth, I don't know how many political parties will be happy to that. I don't need a voter identity or a voter slip any longer. The moment I go there, like what's happening today in the airports, one can go in with an Aadhaar card and a fingerprint recognition, and it will know that this is the passenger who's coming in. Maybe it will be a new method of identification. So depending on who is going to be the system which is going to receive this person, the identity is going to be established. And in my jocular part, if I'm going to enter my home, and it's going to be my mom or dad, they will simply call me by my name the usual way.
Okay, got it. So, in today's world, what is the current operating model? Before we go into, what is the current operating model? Is it like for digital identity management? Is it public, private, or all put together as a mishmash?
Right. So good point, KK. 2 points actually need to be taken care of. If somebody, since I am giving this, I'm just giving as an example. Let's say tomorrow Ganesh Kumar sets up a huge registry and says, these are all the digital identities of so many people who are registered with Ganesh Kumar. What's the guarantee that somebody else will accept this as a valid registry? It's going to be very difficult when you have private entities coming out with this. They may get acceptance over a period of time, but as things stand today, and that's why what KK started off in the beginning was very valid. If it is set up by the government or a quasi-government or a regulatory body type of entities, it will have better acceptance. And to use an IT term, trusted third parties are those who will start off. So there, instead of reinventing the wheel, one of the suggestions that I have is maybe it will require a lot of think tank, a lot of deliberations, a lot of brainstorming to be done. We have got multiple identifiers today, and we did talk about that in the minutes earlier. We have got the driving license or PAN card, Aadhaar, the bank identifier, which is the account number, a whole of the passport. So many numbers are there. Maybe people will have to sit across the table or in conferences like these webinars and come to a conclusion. Maybe this one, which has got a huge population, maybe this can be taken as a base. And my gut feeling is this will veer down to something which is owned or supported by the government. And if that comes, that can be the primary starting point. It could be, for all you know, just as an example, could be perhaps the Aadhaar. Now, once the Aadhaar starts off, the Aadhaar becomes the identifier. Now, once the Aadhaar is identified, if I go to a bank branch, the bank branch will know that this is the Aadhaar, based on which it can know that it is Ganesh Kumar, this is his account number in, let's say, Canara Bank, Jayanagar, as I gave, or my fixed deposit account number, which may be a different number. Or if I use the same Aadhaar number to link it to my driving license, etc. So that is what will happen. There will be multiplicity of identifiers. As no, we cannot wish them away because we have grown up that way. But the identity of the person remains one. Like I said earlier, it could be the name of the person. And once the name of the person is mapped to an identifier, my view is that life becomes a lot more easy. But life becomes a lot more challenging for the people who run these systems, because they'll have to make the IT systems, the intelligence systems, or whatever be the systems they have at the back end, capable of accepting this mapping or interacting with the other main system and getting it done. Here I see a huge potential for growth, and this will be a huge area where a lot of innovation can happen and things will become very nice. If they become very nice, then tomorrow, if I am going to send money from my account, let's say to Krishna Kumar's account for having done a good moderation, like I said in one of my earlier things, once I give or my eyelid closure says, yes, do the transaction, the system will know that it has to be debited to Ganesh account number 123456, and I need to only identify Krishna Kumar as Krishna Kumar. It will go to his account. All these doubts about people giving account numbers which may be wrong, a confirmation whether it indeed went to his account or not, all that will vanish over a period of time and things will go. This is a dream that I have. I'm sure we'll achieve it. The timeline is something that we'll have to work towards. I think I'll stop on this.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you so much. So, ladies and gentlemen, I continue to discuss with Ganesh Kumar. This is a bit of a generic topic. I'm sure all of you have questions to ask him. So that's why I suggest you, if you have a question to ask Ganesh sir, please put in your question in the Q&A box or ask a question directly, whichever is you're comfortable, so that I can take as many questions as possible across to him. So the problem that is there is, if you look at our identity number, identity information, you take you want a telecom number, they want the KYC, so everything goes there. You want to open an account in post office, it goes there. You want to open a bank account, it goes there. FD, everything. Post, IT, Aadhaar, wallet companies, registrars of companies, with the DIN number, everywhere a person's KYC or all the information that is confidential to him is known all over. It's there in all these government agencies, right? So, and with cybercrime, we are perhaps compromising the individual identities. So should we not? You talked about single regulatory process. I feel that it is all more important because cybercrime is a real thing that's happening. So should we not have a single regulatory body which will say, nobody is going to have an individual's identity except me. Please, look at me and take, like Aadhaar is, right? Where you just go into Aadhaar and pick it up. Shouldn't we have a single regulatory body which will run like this?
You're right, KK. Ideally, for any initiative of this type, while democratic approach is certainly very good, and a lot of discussion-based, consultative-based decision-making has to be done, you cannot have multiple entities managing the whole thing. With no offense meant, today, if I were to go to the income tax department, their requirement for a PAN number is for a particular purpose, and they will always be besetted with the problems they have, so they will want it in a particular structure. When I go to a bank, they'll have their requirements. When I go to a driving license authority, regional transport office, they will have something. So there is going to be a challenge. So your idea is very good. Yes, there should be a single regulatory body, but then there is also the other side of the coin. You are very right. In fact, that's the point I thought I'll come to a little later. A whole lot of sensitive information is actually being available in the form of the identity and the attached strings of data attached to the identity, which says what is the type of transaction a person is doing, what is the behavior he's exhibiting, etc. This is a mine of information. It's a wealth of information which no private citizen can afford to risk parting with. But at the same time, it is something that he cannot actually prevent. When I buy, let's say, something from Amazon.com or Amazon.in, Amazon now knows that Ganesh Kumar is buying this particular item every once in a month, etc. That is predictive behavior. More importantly, it also knows that he is going to actually make payment through a credit card. This is his card number. Or he does cash on delivery and this is his address. So a lot of information is coming in. This information can actually be used to ultimately culminate in KYC. Much about that a little later. But the point which KK asked is, yes, there needs to be a regulatory body. Here, if it is organized or if it is under the aegis of the government, it will be best, because we always know that the government does things in the best interest of its citizens. So it will be good if it is available in the government. But of course, having a lot of participation from the citizens of the country with representative groups, etc. One important point which he raised is actually correct. With the type of cyber incidents that are happening today, this entire data is a goldmine, and a lot of malified intent people, I don't call them cyber criminals or cyber thieves, but a lot of people with malified intent would like to take this data for malified purposes. Yes. So one of the approaches which can be done here is that the regulator can also form a standard and say that the information shall not be stored in one central point or a central database. Now, today, communication technologies have actually developed so much that in the COVID era, we are finding that all of us are able to actually communicate fairly reasonably with reasonable level of assurance in the communication technology. Similarly, we are also able to get across multiple pieces of information pieced together to fit a jigsaw puzzle. And therefore, if there is a bank which has got some portion of the data remains with the bank or with the banking sector entity which is going to store this. If it is an e-commerce site, it is got separately in the e-commerce, either in the site or somewhere else. Government has a lot of data, tax department has a lot of data, maybe the traffic police department has a lot of data. So multiple pieces of data are available. What the regulatory organization should bring about is build up standards of data exchange. What can be exchanged, how it can be exchanged, what are the interoperable standards, and what amount of data only can be shared without actually compromising on private citizens' level of privacy. Piece up all this data together for the purpose that is required. So if a bank wants to know, I want to open an account in a bank, and the bank wants to know who is Ganesh Kumar and what is it. Instead of Ganesh Kumar trying to say that he is staying in such and such a place and this is what it is, he only says I'm Ganesh Kumar and gives an identifier. The bank makes a request to this central registry or regulator, whatever it is. They pick up pieces of information which says that Ganesh Kumar owns a particular car. He has been caught twice driving, jumping the signal. His credit history with some other entity has been this, etc. only for the purpose for the bank. And the bank, based on this, knows that this is KYC, knows that this is Ganesh Kumar, knows that he is either a good customer, bad customer, gives some star rating, and decides to say, okay, these facilities I will give you. The same thing can happen for, let's say, Amazon. Amazon, when I log in for, say, for the first time and become a customer of Amazon, it will get to know that Ganesh has been purchasing from these type of sites. This is his payment history. This is the number of times he's returned goods, and therefore he's a good customer or not good customer, etc. So customer segmentation, customer actually stratification can really be done if only this is done. And this will also take care of KYC, as I said earlier. So instead of building up a central KYC registry, which we have to do at this point of time, the KYC registry will also be one source of input to this process of identification, which will help people identify. And if identification is done, then KYC as a concept will actually go into oblivion, because every citizen in the country can be identified uniquely.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, sir. So, sir, we discussed about the personal identity spread across so many places. Okay, our own information is perhaps lying in 10 different places, and so the resultant cyber attacks that can steal our data, and there are a lot of cyber criminals looking around for such a lot of data. And so maybe a standardized central agency can look at it. It has happened. If you look at GST, we had over 100 taxes all across India, right? And they all been collapsed into one single GST.
Right.
So it's it is a huge project, but we have achieved it. It's not that it's not achievable. So I think that's a point that I wanted to make. Now I go into another the point also, sir, about the political risks. Okay. So as you know, so elections can be won or lost, or at least we can make a candidate lose with data analysis, right? You know, because all the slicing and dicing based on the individuals, where he's staying, what is his caste, what is his religion, etc., etc. So the slicing and dicing can be done, and based on that, political parties can make some strategies as to lobby how and what and where. So if you remember, we had a big challenge with Cambridge Analytica, UK, right? One of the political parties had gone to them, and there was a big, huge cry. So using India's data for election purposes, is this a risk that you see?
Yeah, thanks, KK, for this good point. Yes, every coin has two sides, and there is this risk side about it. People can, as I said earlier, the risk of misuse of personal private data is indeed very, very high. You gave the example of that particular entity, which actually, unfortunately, had to get into an imbroglio with our government and vice versa. But what I feel here is that, let me again backtrack a little bit. A few decades ago, also, elections were being fought. And if you notice, and if you noticed in those days also, the candidates used to know that this pocket in a city, these are the type of voters. They may not have had the type of statistical data that we have today from an IT system, but they still had their own sources to know that, okay, if you go to, let's say, again, I'm just giving an example. If you go to the Saukarpet area in the Fort area of Chennai, these are typically traders there. And because they are traders, this will be the type of requirement that they want, which means they will normally support business-related decisions. If you go further down, and I'm giving just the example of Chennai, go down to, let's say, I'm talking of 20, 30, 40 years ago, go down to, let's say, the place called Mambalam or Tinagar today, people are typically residential house goers. This will be the type of vote bank that is there. And the parties and the candidates there used to offer their delivery options based on the segmentation or the profiling of the voters. So the type of candidate who used to be posted or used to participate in the election or used to actually be posted there was matching the expectation of the people there. So this was based on geography. This was based on attributes which they knew by either knowing the trend there, knowing the type of people who stay, etc. Today, things have changed because of technology. You have a whole lot of other data which you can actually use or misuse. So one of the things that we need to do, and that is where I made the point earlier also, is that the data that is available should be available with the entity for the purpose for which the entity has captured the data. So if, for example, Amazon the data which says that Ganesh Kumar sitting in Mumbai is buying these products, okay, I think ethics-wise, privacy concerns wise, like we have in the Citizens Privacy Bill and the other Data Protection Act, etc., will have to make it mandatory that this information is not available for purposes other than what it is intended, including for government purposes, because that is one thing where if the government also starts taking the data for other than by a court direction or something, then the trust of the citizen will be lost. So that is one thing. The second thing that is required, notwithstanding all this, as somebody has already said that data is the next oil, even if we don't go in for a centralized, this type of identity management as I was talking, there are systems available today where people are actually using this data and they are misusing it. I know, and again, I'm just going back to cyber risk. I know there is a state in the country, one of those states towards the eastern side, from where a lot of phishing and spamming activities are taking place. These people are getting the telephone numbers based on call logs which are made not from the telecoms, but from other service providers to whom these telephone numbers are given. Like, for example, if I want to make a complaint against an e-commerce site, I have to give my telephone number. The e-commerce site, when he tries to resolve the complaint, may send somebody to my house to find out whether indeed this complaint is genuine or not. So this person has actually got hold of my telephone number without my even authorizing that this third-party outsourced entity has got my number. So there is a group of people who are already getting this data. I don't know whether it can be called illegal or whatever, but they are getting it. And they are using it for their own purpose, which is phishing and skimming. So the point is, legally, the law has to possibly try to catch up and try to be ahead of the criminals. We cannot wish this away. It's going to be a challenge. So what we need to do, as I said earlier, is to have standards which will ensure that there is best practices as far as interoperability is concerned, and also ensure that safety and security are of paramount importance. Easier said than done, but I thought I will raise this point because some of the audience, if there are people who are in this space, they can think about building in systems which will bring in these type of safety and security measures. There is a challenge. We need to overcome that. I don't have a ready-made answer now, but I'm sure as days progress, we will get towards somewhere near the goals.
Sure. I'm sure a lot of participants are hearing this, and at some point of time, they will be in some position to kind of have dialogues and create something different. So it's time for a question and answer session from the participants.
Okay.
We have the first audio question coming to your way. I don't know his or her name. So could you please unmute yourself and ask the question, please? Also, please introduce. Hello, it just says 1 + 3. So you're coming from a mobile. Can you please unmute yourself and ask the question? Fine. Okay, I think maybe he is having some issues. So ladies and gentlemen, please continue to give your questions on the on the Q&A box, and we will try to get it across. So back office, as and when this gentleman comes and says he is now ready to ask, please let me know. So let me get going. We talked about quite a few things, and so biometric technology has remained where it was. We started the biometric technology, which is thumb impression, maybe one or maybe all 10 fingers. It is key to keeping our digital identities safe because nobody can impersonate a biometric. How can biometric technology evolve, and what does it mean for financial services?
Okay. It means a lot. I'll start off with a conclusion and then I'll try to give the justification. It means a lot because ultimately, when I keep, especially for financial institutions, when a customer keeps his money in that financial organization, he's actually, other than keeping money, he's actually having a lot of trust on that organization. So it becomes incumbent on the organization to live up to the trust of the customer. If it has to live up to the trust of the customer, when the money has to be given back or used for a purpose that the customer wants, the organization should ensure that it is used for the purpose as intended by the customer. And let's assume it is a bank and the customer wants the money to be transferred from his account to somebody else's account. It becomes incumbent on the bank to ensure that the correct amount of the money is debited to the correct person's account and the credit given to the right person's account on the other side as well. Now, if you look back in the initial stages when literacy levels were low, the left-hand thumb impression, KK was right, now we are getting 10 fingers thumb impressions, but at least the left-hand thumb impression, our forefathers recognized the uniqueness of the thumb impression. I'm not too sure how they ensured that the thumb impression matched. Maybe they had their own eyeglass or the iris-based magnifying facility to know that it was unique. But then people were also a little more honest those days. Anyway, leaving that apart, so we started off with the thumb imprints, maybe in paper using the stamp pad ink and then putting that violet color impression on the paper. We have come a long way from there to using biometrics. Typically, you will now notice if you go to most of the bank branches, you will find that there are biometric devices which are available for the staff of the branches to identify themselves to access the bank's database. And there are ATMs which allow people, the customers also to identify themselves with biometrics. There are systems where there is iris recognition also happening. So yes, there is a message which KK was trying to say. The growth in the biometric based identification has not been as fast or as exponential as the growth in the type of financial services like in the payment systems. We need to grow here. And that is one of the points which I thought I'll talk about identity today, because the financial services industry cannot be an industry in isolation. It needs support from a lot of others. And in today's post-COVID era, when there are a lot of interactions going to happen place with hitherto uninteractive, that is, you have now a superset and the subsets are going to be hitherto separate sets. If these sets have to start integrating, we need a lot of scientific community members to come together. I am aware of certain labs which are doing scientific research, doing a lot of work on biometric, non-invasive biometrics, meaning that I don't need to put my finger. Okay, so let's assume that there is a camera which is there. The camera will be able to find out possibly the size of my nose or the length of my iris or the diameter, etc. Multiple technologies are being used today. The developments are going on. So if the scientific fraternity, the research fraternity comes out with ideas which can be converted into implementable solutions, my view is that biometrics is going to be the future. Not the type of biometrics which is there today where I have to go and put my thumb impression or go and stare in front of a camera. It will be non-invasive. Like, I don't know how many of you are aware, there are certain airports in the world where there are no policemen or law enforcement people visible at all. As you walk, there are cameras which are capturing your movements. And if they find that you're walking with grace, with confidence, they know you're a guy who need not be watched much. But if you're looking up and down as if you are having some doubt, then the camera zooms on you, tries to pick up signals, and they try to say, okay, he is doing this because he is not aware, he is a newcomer, or he is trying to do something which is an illegal activity. They are doing it already. Now, if they can do it for law enforcement, I'm sure the time will be very soon when they can do it for biometric identification for the financial sector as well.
Yes, sir. I'm sure. So ladies and gentlemen, we were talking about, sir said about, real estate, from where a lot of these data, somehow they have been getting this data and they have been collecting it and creating frauds. So I kind of was recollecting, which is the, in case you'll want to know more about it, go to Netflix and you can see a movie called Jamtara. Watch this movie, Jamtara. It is extremely educative on how cyber crimes are committed and how they use your telephone number and they commit a crime on you. Watch the movie called Jamtara. Okay, let's move on, sir. So we had this early internet age. It was like, it's a complete revolution by itself. The information age came with internet. And now we are in the current era of interconnected and intelligent. Everything is smart, right? We already connected appliances, connected car, connected homes, IoTs all over the town, Wi-Fi's all over everywhere. What are the implications of the evolution in digital identity management on payments? You already touched upon some points, maybe one or two. If you have left, you can talk about it.
Okay, I'll talk about it, and maybe I'll talk about one new development which is happening on IoT-based devices, which are either those which we use in day-to-day life or those which are like wearables. It could be a smartwatch or one of those scientific devices which monitor my steps or my heart rate and other vital medical parameters, etc. And I don't know, after Corona, we maybe will have one more device which will try to see whether the COVID virus is there or not. So the point is, with the Internet of Things coming in fact, I dream of a day when all these will be able to send across signals which matter. In one of my previous sessions, I was talking about how intelligent gas cylinder delivery can be done, where the payment can happen without the person having to authorize because the cylinder has been delivered to some or in just-in-time manufacturing companies. Now, if you look at individuals, since you said about it, I can have, let's say, a wearable which is there with me, let's say my smartwatch. And let's say that I have set an alarm in that to say that at this particular point in time, I have to do, let's say that I have to get up at 6 o'clock, 6:20, I have to go for my gym. Let's say that is what it is. And the moment I go to my gym, let's say it's one of those paid private gym clubs, when I enter in, the wearable device is available with me. My biometrics are also available. The gym knows that Ganesh Kumar is coming. It knows that I normally go to this particular device. And depending on the usage of the device for 20 minutes, 15 minutes, whatever it is pay by use, not just a flat payment amount. So I will be using it, and at the end of it, when I've used it, it will be over. As I'm using it, it will also possibly send a message across to my doctor saying that Ganesh Kumar is doing his exercise, his heartbeat is this, his pulse rate is this, there is nothing to worry. Or the doctor says, no, look, yesterday only you donated blood, you should not go today. So I will get a message immediately saying that please step off the device, step off the gym. You don't need to do it today, go 2 days later or something like that. So the point is, as KK said earlier, in the interconnected, internet-based world, 20 years ago we had, or even 30 years ago, we had only radios. And all the radio waves that were going on were only microwaves. Today, the microwaves are still there, but you have got a huge amount of internet-based bandwidth going on using, again, both cables and non-cable based transmission. Once that has happened, tomorrow my refrigerator, my TV, my keyboard, my phone, my wearable, could be my shoe. All these will turn out to be IoT-based devices, which will give, I'm only talking with reference to the topic of discussion today, my identity. And that when that my identity is known, then I envisage tomorrow a day where I don't need to remember my bank account number, but my transaction will still go through. I don't need to remember my voter ID, but I can still drop my vote. Perhaps the future can be that I don't need to go to a voting station. I can do it possibly sitting in the confines of my house itself. Maybe that is what is the ultimate goalpost. Maybe I can go and conduct or have a driving license test done by simply going to the RTO or to an accredited agency where there is a simulator and I do the test. So many of these things are going to be possible in the general world. But as far as the financial system is concerned, and like I always have hold a view that individuals, especially citizens in India, like to discuss about financial things. The bank branch will still be there. In what form, one doesn't know. But when he goes there, his identity is something which will be unique, known, kept confidential, and will be made use to a manner in which the customer gets a lot of comfort and confidence. So this is
Yes, sir. Thank
what
you so
I
much.
think will be the end.
Will be the future,
Right.
right? The wearables part. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
So actually, there is a query on the same on wearables as the future of identification, and you already answered that question. Maybe you knew beforehand. So the question is coming. So let's take another question from one of the participants. It's on barcodes. It says barcode on cards, which once stored only numerical data, can now secure signature, fingerprint, or even facial data. And that's there's a lot of development that's happened in barcodes. So why we can't use barcodes, which is now not used much, except for maybe if you go to the mall for your billing purposes. So his question is, can we use barcode and can we have identification for digital identification?
The answer is actually a big yes. Barcodes can certainly be used, but again, it depends on the purpose for which the barcode is going to be used. If, as he rightly said, if it is on a card, instead of actually keying in the numbers from the card or swiping the card, you have a barcode reader like you have in most of the shops in the malls. It captures whatever is there in the barcode. Certainly, it can be done. It can be used, for example, in tracking parcels as they move through from one location to other in a conveyor belt or in a post office or in a courier agency. It can be used to track maybe items which are moving within an office or outside the office, etc. But using barcodes for identity of an individual, not too sure whether that will be working, because I don't think you need to have a barcode to identify a person, rather a biometric or something which the person has. I wouldn't even be surprised if a few years down the line, there is non-invasive DNA tracking facility available, which will, when I go in front of the DNA scanner, I don't need to give any component for DNA testing. It will automatically say, this is the DNA, there's a DNA bank available, and it will match and say, this is Ganesh Kumar. So that is what will happen. So to answer this person's point, yes, barcodes are necessary. This is a good point to start with, where these are small devices, small items, small things like packets or cards, etc. to start with. But I think in the long run, the barcodes will be good to do a flip start, but they will actually migrate into something else which is available with the person, with the packet, with the card, or with whatever device that is.
So these are the days of tattoos, right? So why can't I have a tattoo done on my cheek of a barcode and go along with it? I don't need anything else.
Perfect.
Right? Could be the
absolutely
possible.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You can do that.
Yes. So could be. So the gentleman who asked the code about the barcode, I hope, yeah, there is a lot of possibilities. So let's see how it goes. Another question, which is also my question. So similar based. No session on with fintech participants is complete without blockchain, right? So let's talk about the blockchain technologies. So blockchain technology with appropriate design and governance could potentially help decentralize the information such that the storing is so decentralized it's impossible for some criminals to attack. So we talked about earlier of a government body, a quasi body or somebody like a GSTIN to look after the entire identity of the Indian citizens. Along with that, if they adopt a blockchain technology, which is data decentralized, there cannot be a point of failure, nor can there be cyber intrusion or for internal frauds or any such things. What are your thoughts, sir?
The idea is very good. Actually, blockchain can certainly be used. But wearing my technology hat, see, the blockchain as a technology goes on by adding on more and more packets to, it's like those of us who have been playing the game of that snake in our old mobile phones or computers, where it goes on gobbling up more and more food and the snake's tail keeps growing. So the blockchain works that way. Typically, a blockchain is actually a very good candidate for storing such data in a decentralized and in places where the geography is far unrelated, meaning that one part of the block will be available, let's say, in Kanyakumari, another block maybe in Kashmir. I'm just giving an example. Or it could be as near as half a meter, but still physically in two different systems. Yes, there is huge potential for blockchain. There is also huge potential for using this data once you regroup it using big data analytics and artificial intelligence. How to even conglomerate the data, you need AI tools. And ultimately, since before anybody else asks, having all this in a cloud will also make it more efficient, cost effective. And therefore, all the developments which are happening in today's world, I've tried to actually use all of them to say that identity management can be done with the technology tools we have today. With the technology tools that will come tomorrow, I'm sure the takeoff for this rocket will be much more smoother.
Right, sir. Thank you. Thank you for, thank you very much, sir. And that was a good question also. Thank you from YouTube. This question came. It was also one of my questions. So you asked earlier. So great. I think must be from a fintech company only. So we talked about digital identification, and it's from a economic point of view. Okay, let's look at the other round. From a non-economic value. Okay, for example, can digital identification can't it be a robust identity program which can help guard, say, against child marriage or human trafficking? This kind of digital codes identification can be used. What are your thoughts, sir?
Absolutely. You hit the nail on the head. It can be the end users of all this is manifold. It can be the sky is a limit. There are multiple methods. And yes, from a government perspective or from a society perspective, these are things which have to be seen. So yes, you're right. Instead of getting a passport with a stamp ECNR, immigration check not required, or immigration check required, which used to be in the primitive days the only means of ensuring that unskilled labor was not exploited in countries outside. Today, using all this, the moment a person goes and stands in front of an immigration officer, using this technology, he will know this person is going to be exploited outside, or he's being used for human trafficking, or he's being used for purposes which are not correct. You're also right insofar as I don't know whether child marriages still happen or not. But the point is, since there is the digital identity of a kid when the kid was born and the child was born, and there will be also an identity at some point in time saying this person is getting married to somebody else, a system can easily find out whether this is happening within the framework which is available for age in terms of marriageable age. Certainly it can work. It can also, there is also another thing, a lot of impetus is now being given to reforming criminals. That's an important area because every society could only reform criminals. This can be used there also to track how criminals are actually performing once they come out. So that's also a good area. So a lot of positive social benefits are also
Yes, excellent. So I have one very interesting query. I think something perhaps we all overlook. The code CVV, it's a 3-digit code. And I think ever since cards have come into being, we print this 3-digit code is printed behind, and it is such an important code, right? CVV code is such an important for any of your transactions to go through. Why are we still printing this 3-digit code? Why are we not getting out of this so that it is never visible?
I wish I can, in my earlier avatar when I was with the Reserve Bank of India, I could have said that in this webinar, this is what was said, and the view was that in unanimously take away the KVV. And well, I can just recall, we had a serious amount of discussion on saying the KVV should not be printed. Actually, I should have started off by saying, this is something which evolved in the card industry as a security feature when we did not have IT-based authentication. I don't know whether you remember, when the cards first came, they were actually embossed cards, which used to be pushed over a device, which will get that number on a chart slip.
Yeah.
And when the cards were being migrated from that level to being used at either points of sale or an internet, they needed another factor of identification, which is where the CVV came in. You're right, I can get where you're going to. Maybe it's time now to review the security features in a card. In fact, I would go one step further and say that instead of looking at whether something should be there in the card, whether it should be the expiry date, whether it should be the CVV, etc. Once the digital identity is established, why do I need a card at all? If I am established as Ganesh Kumar, and let's say that Visa has given me through, let's say, Canara Bank, a limit of 1,25,000, I should be able to do transactions by up to 1,25,000 by a digital identifier, which is not my card. See, the card was required when the digital identity was not known. The card holder was allowed to do the transaction. The card holder in turn was mapped to say that he is Ganesh Kumar. The shopman didn't know all that. Today, in fact, even today, the shopman will not know. The device, possibly the POS terminal in the shop, will be able to detect and say that this is Ganesh Kumar. His limit is 1,25,000. He has used 1,00,000. So up to 25,000, allow him the bill. It'll go through. So I think the future, rather than saying CVV is not required, yes, you're right. From a fraud prevention perspective, CVV, if it is not printed, is a great idea. But then that requires complete consensus the world over because we are following an international standard for cards across the world. Better method from that is to move away from cards totally and have a total digital identity-based transaction processing. That may be a better idea.
Yes, absolutely. And I would go to one step behind. Why should the card even have my name and my expiry date? It's all, you have a chip already there, right? Why are we not using the chip, which everything can be embedded? So it's just a plain card that I have. That's it. If the card is still to survive, then that's it. I don't need to do anything else.
Correct.
But so be it. I think it's another day's deliberation. I have a last question for you, sir. It's already past 4 o'clock, but if you don't mind, can I ask this question to you?
Yeah, sure.
It's topical. So it is topical, and it is also coming from your ex-employer. So we thought we should ask you this question. Oh, wow. So it's from RBI, the recent news where it said that Google Pay is not a payment system operator. Your thoughts, sir? What do you have to say on this?
Well, I don't have to tell any thoughts because that is the position stated by Google in front of a legal entity. So, no, but the point is right, actually. What is Google doing? Google is actually an intermediary. Google Pay, when I do a message across using Google, I am using Google as a platform for transforming an instruction from my end to my bank or card company or wherever to say debit and send money to KK's account. So Google is not a payment system operator as things stand today. But if tomorrow Google, and I think I will explain to you something which will perhaps give a lot of people confidence on this. A payment system operator is somebody who facilitates the movement of funds and also helps in ensuring the settlement of that, either by doing the funds transfer through himself or through an entity which is authorized to do the funds transfer, typically a bank or something. What Google Pay is doing, and I'll give you an example. Let's say I had a check-based payment to be made. Okay, I can call, I'm saying, let's say I was in a bank, I was in my office, I can call my peon or my friend or my stenographer or my personal assistant and tell him, take this check to a bank, withdraw the money and come. He has done the job of a messenger. He is not the account holder. Similarly, Google is doing a delivery channel based activity. It is not doing a payment service. And that is why it is not characterized as a payment system operator now. But tomorrow, if Google decides that they are going to enter into the payment space, then they'll have to get authorization of the Reserve Bank of India. Then they will become a payment service provider or operator. Right now, they are not.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. Yes, thank you, Rinda Sharikar, for asking this very topical question. So participants ask such kind of very topical questions, which is just out yesterday. So thanks for asking that question, Rinda. So we have come to the end of the show. It's past 6 minutes past 4 o'clock. Sorry for holding you back by 6 minutes. So, ladies and gentlemen, we covered a whole lot of topics and subtopics in digital identity. We started with ration cards, and then we are right now in various forms of distribution of data. We talked about a little bit on cyber attacks. We talked about contactless cards, wearables as the future of identification, and a whole lot of queries that also came from the participants. Ganesh sir, I just want to say thank you so much for coming, sharing with such a lot of information. You are like a fountainhead of information, and you could explain in very, very simple terms what is this whole gamut of digital identity and where we should look at and what should be in future. Thank you very much for spending 1 hour with us. It was indeed good. And thank you very much. Please do come some other time whenever we have a slot for you. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, KK. Good moderation by you. Covered most of the topics, and thanks to the entire audience for listening to me. All the best.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you.